The Honourable Leader of the Second Opposition.
Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank the folks from Make Poverty History for joining us here today. When it comes to dealing with poverty, Manitoba's record stands out as unique in its failures. I table a report that shows between 1981 and 2010, every single province experienced a considerable drop in poverty for single-parent families but one, Manitoba, where it increased by 9.1%. Manitoba has seen more than $1 billion in corporate, property and individual tax cuts for the wealthiest Manitobans, while hiking taxes on those who can least afford it, years of frozen budgets and layoffs, two-tier workplaces, privatization and balancing budgets on the backs of the poorest of the poor, who haven't seen a raise in their incomes in more than a generation. And that was just the NDP, Madam Speaker. For 17 years, the NDP maintained and even surpassed right-wing PC policies on crimes, taxes and poverty. Instead of doubling down on the NDP's failures, will this Premier deliver his long-awaited poverty plan and action to match it? Thank you. Those three.
The Honourable First Minister.
Madam Speaker, we are somewhat pleased with the modest progress we've experienced thus far in battling poverty, but certainly emboldened by the challenges of doing more and better on these important files. And I would say to the member that certainly we are encouraged in the sense that we are leaving more money on the kitchen tables of Manitobans, which does help to alleviate poverty in those households that he referenced, as opposed to raising taxes like the PST, broadening the applications of the PST, as the previous administration did, which made things harder for low-income households. Frankly, Madam Speaker, as their tax levels rose, disproportionately poverty levels rose along with them, and this hurt low-income families very much. We want to help low-income families. We want to make sure that we're doing everything we can. I want to say, Madam Speaker, as I have the opportunity, congratulations to Tom Yondo, the people from Plumas, who worked so hard on the Plumas Pirates franchise for 75 years. It's a fine community, he's a fine guy, and he makes his former teachers very, very proud.
The Honourable Member of the Second Opposition on a supplementary question.
Madam Speaker, we should all celebrate that Manitoba has fewer children living in poverty, but I don't know that there's a shred of evidence that this government's policies have anything to do with it. The improvements for families with children coincide with the new federal Canada Child Benefit, which is progressive and tax-free. It actually goes to families who need it most. Since being implemented, it means $500 million more in new funds for Manitoban families, a guaranteed income for children. But, Madam Speaker, both the NDP and the PCs have followed the practice of confiscating that benefit from the 10,000 plus children in care and using it to shrink the deficit, effectively taxing the income of the poorest, most vulnerable children at 100%. In opposition, the member for Portage la Prairie called it immoral. Will this government cease the shameful, immoral practice of taking funds from the poorest, most vulnerable children in the province, children in care?
The Honourable First Minister.
Well, to be fair, Madam Speaker, to the federal government in this respect, to the member praises from his Ottawa West location as Ottawa East, let's also understand that they have broken their commitments on a number of important fronts, whether it be electoral reform or on balancing the books. They actually have proposed now to add to the debt of our country over $30 billion over the next few years. I know the member supports that and has said that the problem the NDP had wasn't overspending in the past, it was underspending. So I know his belief that we can hand these obligations to our children and grandchildren is instilled in him, but we don't agree that that's fair or right. We are working to address poverty. We will continue to do so, and I would praise the federal government where I felt it was deserved. In this particular instance, I think it's not that much deserved.
Great.
The Honourable Leader of the Second Opposition.
Madam Speaker, the Premier is mistaken when he says that I think the NDP should have spent more. What I said is that, like the PCs, they blew a hole in the deficit and in the debt by doing $1 billion in tax cuts by 2009. Perhaps if the Premier had spent more time in that province, he'd be aware of that. But between 1981 and 2010, Manitoba's had the worst growth of any province. One of the fundamental reasons for Manitoba's poverty is that our wages are low. 1 in 5 Manitobans haven't seen a raise since 1976. Last December, in the State of the Province address, the Premier revealed that his government had hired a high-priced consultant who discovered, to the Premier's shock, that this government has no plan for jobs, growth, or economic development, something any Manitoban could have told him for free. This total lack of a plan was cited as one of the reasons for Manitoba's credit downgrade last year, and there is still no plan and no action. Will this government's economic plan recognize, when it's released, that we need to create new jobs with better wages so that parents can lift themselves and their children out of poverty?
The Honourable First Minister.
There's much more to do, of course, Madam Speaker, to help people get out of poverty. The old axiom about the best cure for poverty is employment opportunities or a job is to some degree is valid. And so I would share with the member of of St. Boniface, Madam Speaker, that Manitoba has had some experience in the last 2.5 years of a positive nature we shouldn't ignore. We've led the country in agricultural productivity and farm cash receipts. That's a good news thing because many of our people are rural and are impacted, as we all are, by ag economy. We've led the country in retail sales of vehicles, for example. In terms of private sector capital spending growth, we are first in the country, Madam Speaker, and expected to be first again this year.
Right.
In terms of international exports, our exports are up to the United States by 23% this year, and they are the best among the provinces, Madam Speaker. Our economic performance is significant. It is a marked accomplishment, not just for this government, Madam Speaker, but for the investors and small business people of our province. I would hope the member would share in the elation we feel about those facts.